Alright, so this one is for Zine Al Abidine Belhachim, and I'm sorry if I murdered your name. And this is he's got issues with landscapes here. And so if you like this, consider subscribing to my Patreon, and for $5 a month you can get a critique for as long as you're subscribed. Okay, so the first issue that I think you have going on is that you're really not defining your landscapes, and you're really focusing more on texture than anything else. And so when I do something like this, the first thing I would do right off the bat is I'm just going to take this and we're going to divide it into a couple different things. The first thing is we're just going to divide this into the landscapes, and I'm just going to basically grab this and we're going to cut that to a new layer, and then I'm going to take out your water scene here, and we're going to cut that to a new layer, and then so we're stuck with different parts here. We are stuck with landscape, we're stuck with the water, and we're stuck with the clouds in the background. So the clouds in the background, the first thing I would say right off the bat with that is that we really want to sit down and we want to break down what these clouds are. And so what I tend to do is, I'm just going to grab these clouds here, and you've got the right idea. It's from a light to a dark. I'm going to grab some of your dark here, and I'm just going to, we're not going to use that brush, I'm just going to use kind of a solid brush like so, and I'm going to paint over your clouds for the initial thing. I'm not even going to worry about the clouds themselves. We're just going to paint up a little bit, kind of, there is, like so. Okay, so with that being done, I've just kind of filled in the background with a nice background color. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this these landscapes here, and I'm actually going to define them a little bit more. I'm going to work on taking this darker color, and I'm just going to work over it, and I'll paste it down. But I'm going to take this defining color here, and I'm going to kind of build up this defining color, and just kind of, you can see here really quickly, just kind of taking this and building it over like so. So this is my first color, and the same thing here. I'm just going to kind of build up the second color. And the first thing I look at is I'm going to look at silhouettes. So the silhouettes are really kind of the key point in what you're looking for in this. You know, how is your information reading? And I think you're trying too hard with, you know, just keeping this concept of just kind of blocking out some of the little pieces, and you're trying to like fade in everything so much. Like you've got your silhouette going on, and it's so blended in. I mean, if you notice here, it's so blended in with everything else, you really don't define anything. And so with that, I'm just kind of you know, grabbing these dark colors, and I'm putting in a little bit more emphasis on rounding out the shapes, maybe some divots in there, maybe something like that. So there is my kind of initial kind of silhouette. So from there, I'm going to actually change this up. I'm going to move this a little bit down, and this a little bit back. And so by doing that, that gives me a semblance of, now I've got like kind of a foreground element and I've got a background element. So I'm going to just grab this and fill this in a little bit. Then I'm going to create another layer here real quick, and I'm going to say new layer, and I'm going to grab one of your darker colors from your ocean here, and I'm going to just kind of start painting around that. So I'm kind of like this, and okay, so now, as you can see right now, my shapes are really reading well. You know, I've got foreground element, I've got a background element, and actually what I'm going to do is I've got my paint here, so I'm going to add in just one more new layer, and I'm going to add in kind of this like so, and that is going to go above the water like this, and I'm going to actually separate these real quick so it's just easier to work with stuff. And we're just going to cut that out. Okay, so now I've got these different elements, all right? And I'm going to go in here, I'm going to grab my brush, and we're going to turn off this. So you can see my shapes are reading well. The problem is I'm going to change this. I'm going to go to adjustments here, and I'm going to change the lightness to this a little bit. So there's a little bit lighter. I'm going to change this to, this is fine, and I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to adjust it so that it's a little bit darker. Alright, so now with this all in kind of cahoots here, I have a background, a middle ground, and a foreground element. And that's going to be what gives me and defines my landscape. You know, in fact, I'm going to probably like kind of play around with this a little bit. Maybe I'll select and transform it and kind of add in maybe something like that, and then I'll put that under there, so like something like that. Maybe just kind of erase out some of this here. Okay, so as you can see, this element now has, you know, I've defined my elements. I've got that background, I've got the middle ground, I've got the foreground, I've got my water, and I've got my landscape, and everything's reading very well. And so now you want to add form in. So once you've got this done, you want to add your form, and you want to basically go in and start emphasizing your areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to grab your dark brown here, go back, and so now with this dark brown I'm going to emphasize form. So I need a light direction. So in order to do this, I'm just going to kind of give me a light direction like this, and so that is going to kind of emphasize, and I'm just adding in kind of this dark brown emphasis, and I'm going to go in here, and this light is going to be kind of a blue. Let's emphasize that light. So I'm just kind of putting in, and you can see by just kind of putting in a little bit of light and shadow, I'm now developing my sense of, you know, how things are looking. A little dark here, go in here and add that. So now you're getting this sense of where the form is coming from, as well as where everything else is coming from. So I'm going to use the same thing, same technique here, and we're just going to kind of block in. Let's get rid of that one. I'm going to just solid this color. So I'm going to just block in this and kind of, and you can see just by doing some of this little bit of block in like this and a little bit of like kind of rough idea, you're getting a much more definable concept. And even going back to this one here, I can even kind of add in a little bit of kind of roughness. And because they're not as light, they're not as dark, I'm now going to go in and kind of emphasize the form. And then it boils down to, once you get this done, that's when you start adding in your details. That's when you start adding in your grass. That's when you start adding in your other information. And even here, I can go to this this paint job and add in a little bit of lightness, and I'm just going to kind of, and then I'm going to add dark over here. So, and adding in little shadows, adding in little bits of information like that allow me to start reading things better. And then when you get all of that done, that's when you start adding in, when you get all the texture and all of that stuff defined, that's when you start adding in a little bit more of your atmospheric effect going on. And so the atmospheric effect is nothing more than adding a new layer with a little bit of, kind of like so, and then we can add a new layer above this, and we're just going to add like this, and we can even lower the opacity to it a little bit. So by doing that, I'm now changing up something to be a little bit darker, a little bit more emphasized, and I've got an idea. And then you really want to sit down and create a focal point too, because the problem you have going on is, where's our things pointing? And so, if you look at design, this is like any other composition that you do. You need to define your design. So this is looking up. Actually, it would help to have a eraser here. So this is looking up this way, and this is looking up this way. This is also looking down, but it makes me swoop up, and this is looking over here. So, this is creating some type of focal point in here, and I can do something as simple as, creating, a couple birds in here to give it flight, or if that's not interesting enough, maybe I can even add in something a little bit simpler here, and I'm just going to really quickly, let's do something like this, just really quickly kind of give me emphasis to a focal point. And let's add a little blue to that. And so now I've got, some type of focal point. Maybe I'll just add wings or something like that, or subtract this, play with the shape a little bit more. And now I've got some sense of focal point, and everything's kind of getting drawn to it. But it's really about, getting those details down, and you don't want to add in, you do not want to go in and add in all this extra, stuff you've got going on, because what's happening with all this extra stuff is you've got no sense of construction. You've got no sense of, how things are actually developed. And it's until you start adding in those little bits and pieces, and let's get rid of this. And it's till you start adding in those bits and pieces that these rough shapes, they need to read. They need to have some semblance of, how you're actually reading with, a brush, how you're actually kind of developing the idea. And even just simply blocking something as simple as a chalk brush out, and kind of, let's get rid of this fog here, adding in this chalk brush and adding in kind of that development of landscape, and adding in some type of texture. Let me grab this rock texture here, and simply now I've got some semblance of, how it's starting to get a little bit more rocky. I can go in and add in kind of my boulder, patterns and a little bit more texture, darken things up a little bit more, and it really depends on what type of texture you want to kind of have. Here is just, if you want that splotchy, grassy texture, same thing here. Oops, gotta lock your layers. So if you want that splotchy, grassy texture, more of that knoll cut type of finish, you're going to add something like that in there, and then you're going to go back in with just a regular brush and kind of paint out some of it to get that idea that things are kind of building up on it. So it's really about your simple shapes and then building up to get more complex information in there. All right. I hope that helps. Like I said, if you like this, subscribe to my Patreon. And if you have any other questions, just ask.